The gym was packed that afternoon, music pulsing through the air, weights clanging, and people moving with purpose. Among them was Myra, a quiet, soft-spoken girl who mostly kept to herself. She wasn't the loudest, strongest, or the one showing off, but she showed up every day, focused and disciplined. Still, some of the regulars treated her like a joke, whispering behind her back, making snide remarks about how she didn't belong there. They called her the ghost, always there, never noticed. That day, everything changed. It started off like any normal session. Myra was warming up near the treadmill when a group of guys, the kind who always seemed to treat the gym like a playground, decided they wanted a laugh. They had noticed her glancing toward the recovery corner earlier, where the ice bath was set up. Without warning, one of them nudged the others, and suddenly, laughter filled the room as they grabbed Myra and tossed her into the freezing bath as a prank. The room went silent for a moment and broke into scattered chuckles until Myra didn't scream. She didn't panic. Instead, she sat completely still, her breath steady, eyes locked forward like she was in total control. One of the trainers moved in to stop it, but something about her presence froze everyone around. What happened next? No one expected. Because Myra wasn't just any girl trying to fit in, and this moment wasn't her breaking point. It was her awakening. The ones who thought they were laughing at her were about to witness something none of them could explain, and it would leave the entire gym stunned, silent, and questioning everything they thought they knew about strength. Myra stayed in that freezing water like it was nothing. No flinch, no tears, just calm. The smirks on the guys' faces faded fast. People nearby had stopped mid-rep, their eyes fixed on her like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. One of the girls from the front desk whispered, "Is she okay?" But no one moved. It was like they were watching something they didn't understand. For months, Myra had been training quietly, unnoticed. She never filmed her workouts. She never showed off. But what no one knew was why she came here, day after day, without fail. She wasn't here just to get fit or tone up like most assumed. Myra had a past, one she didn't talk about. One she had spent years trying to bury under discipline and silence. But some things don't stay buried forever. The cold didn't scare her. It reminded her of nights on the mountains, of training under harsh winds, pushing her body past limits most people never even dreamed of. She wasn't always this quiet. There was a time when Myra stood at the top of her field, competitive, fierce, respected, until everything crumbled after one choice that cost her everything. Now, this gym had been her reset. A place where no one knew her name, where she could rebuild without questions or judgment. At least, that's what she thought. But this prank, this moment, had woken up something she tried to keep locked away. The air felt heavy. No one laughed anymore. Myra finally stood up from the ice water dripping off her frame, her eyes scanning the room. And just like that, the energy shifted. No yelling, no revenge. Just silence. And yet, every person there could feel that something was about to happen as Myra stepped out of the ice bath, steam rising off her soaked clothes in the chilled gym air. People slowly returned to their workouts, but their focus had shifted. Eyes kept darting toward her, confused, uneasy. The group of guys who started it all stood in a huddle now, quiet for once. Their leader, Jay, who usually ran his mouth without a filter, looked shaken. He'd expected yelling, maybe tears, not ... whatever that was. He muttered, "Who even is she?" In the locker room later, whispers swirled. Some said she was ex-military. Others thought she was some kind of elite athlete on a secret comeback. No one really knew. But that didn't stop the theories from spreading. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Myra was still silent, changing back into dry clothes with a calm that made people more nervous than anger ever could. Outside the gym, the manager, Tessa, was reviewing the security footage, jaw tight. She didn't like drama, but this wasn't just drama. It was something deeper. She had seen Mira's form during training. Always sharp, controlled, precise. Not the kind you learn from YouTube videos or casual sessions. It was the kind of movement taught by professionals, sharpened under pressure. Tessa had her own past too, and something about Mira's energy felt familiar. Meanwhile, Jay wasn't done. His ego, bruised in front of his crew, wouldn't let this go. "She thinks she can play tough," he said later that night, scrolling through Myra's barely their social media. "We'll see how tough she really is." What he didn't know was that the last person who tried to break Myra ended up losing more than just a fight. And what no one else saw was the message Myra received just after leaving the gym. A name, a date, and the words, "They found you." Myra didn't sleep that night. The message kept replaying in her mind. She hadn't heard that name in years, the one tied to the life she walked away from. Her hands trembled as she held her phone, not from fear, but from something colder. She had kept her past hidden, locked behind training sessions, routine, and silence. But the moment those guys tossed her into that ice bath, something in her shifted. It wasn't just about the prank anymore. It was a warning. And now, whoever sent that message was reminding her that disappearing wasn't enough. The next day, she returned to the gym as if nothing had happened. But this time, everyone noticed. Her presence filled the space in a new way. People moved aside when she walked past, and even Jay, who'd always strutted like he owned the place, avoided eye contact. Still, something in his pride wouldn't back down. He had a point to prove. Rumors had stirred something ugly in him, and when people whispered about Mira's ice bath moment, it made him burn with the need to reclaim control. He waited until late evening when the gym was almost empty. Mira was finishing her sets, sweat rolling down her neck, her focus razor sharp. Jay stepped up with that same forced grin, but his tone was off. "You think you're special now?" he muttered. "Let's see what you're really made of." Before she could respond, a shadow passed behind her. Not Jay. Someone else. Mira's breath caught. She turned slowly. Standing near the back door was a man in black, not gym staff, not a member, but familiar, too familiar. Her pulse spiked, not with fear, but recognition. They hadn't just found her. They had come for her. And they weren't here to talk. The man didn't move. He stood by the exit, arms crossed, face unreadable. But Mira knew that stance too well. Controlled, calculating, trained. The kind of presence that didn't belong in a public gym unless there was a mission involved. Jay, oblivious to the tension behind him, kept talking. "You've been walking around like you've run this place since yesterday. That ends tonight." Mira's eyes never left the man. She subtly stepped back, putting space between herself and Jay without drawing attention. She wasn't afraid of Jay. He was just noise, but the figure watching her. That was a storm she'd hoped never to face again. Her instincts screamed that this wasn't just a warning. It was a sign that whatever she ran from had finally caught up. The question was, how deep had it followed her? Jay reached for her wrist to provoke a reaction, but before he touched her, Myra twisted slightly, eyes sharp. "Don't," she said, low and calm. Something in her tone made him pause. "What? You gonna fight me now?" he scoffed. Myra didn't answer. Behind them, a man slipped out through the back door, and that's when it hit her. He hadn't come to confront her. He'd come to plant something. Myra turned, grabbed her bag, and rushed past Jay, ignoring the startled glances from the last few gym-goers lingering near the exit. She pushed through the back lot, eyes scanning for any sign of the man. Nothing. But when she reached her car, the passenger door was slightly ajar. She never left it unlocked. Inside on the seat was a sealed envelope. No name, no markings. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photo of her from this morning and scribbled beneath it, in red ink, "Time's up." Myra's grip tightened around the photo as her heart pounded in her ears. She looked up, scanning the shadows of the parking lot, but the man was gone. The message was clear. They weren't warning her. They were watching her. And whoever sent it knew exactly how to get inside her head. She had spent years staying invisible, changing her name, staying off-grid. But someone had pulled her file. Someone who knew what she'd done and who she used to be. She drove in silence, adrenaline pushing her through red lights, eyes darting to her rearview mirror every few seconds. Back at her apartment, she double-locked the door, pulled the blinds shut, and dumped her gym bag on the floor. From a hidden drawer behind a false panel in her closet, she pulled out an old metal case. Inside, untouched for years, were fragments of her past, an old ID badge, foreign currency, a USB drive, and a small folded photo of a younger Myra in tactical gear. Smiling beside the very man who had watched her from the gym, she plugged in the USB. Files loaded. Missions, reports, names, and one name glared back at her. Jay. Her eyes widened. It wasn't a coincidence. Jay was not just some loud gym regular. He was connected. Not deep like she had been, but enough. Enough to be placed near her, to test her, to pull her out of hiding. It had all been planned. The prank, the setup. Ice bath. Every moment designed to see if she would break or react. And she had, not by fighting back, but by not fighting. That's what triggered the final move. Her cover was blown. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. One new message. Unknown number. She opened it. A video. It was live footage from inside her apartment. The camera slowly panned until it pointed straight at her front door. And then came the knock. Myra didn't move at first. She just stood there, staring at the screen, the knock still echoing in her ears. Then something shifted. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the person behind the door, not of her past, and definitely not of being seen. She reached for the metal case, grabbed the ID badge, and tucked it into her jacket. If they wanted the version of her she used to be, they were about to meet her. She opened the door, but instead of an enemy, it was Tessa, the gym manager. Out of breath, clearly nervous. "I saw the man too," she said quickly. "He's not from here. I recognized the mark on his neck. Military intel, not local." Myra blinked, surprised. Tessa took a deep breath. "You're not the only one who left that world behind." In that moment, Myra understood. She wasn't alone anymore. And the only way out of this was forward, not running, but standing. The next morning, Myra returned to the gym like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. She walked in with quiet confidence, her posture steady, her focus sharper than ever. Jay was there, but this time he didn't speak. He just watched, uneasy, as if realizing he was never part of the game, just a piece on the board. By the end of the week, the strange man was gone. The surveillance stopped. Myra never found out exactly who sent him or why they backed off. But she had a feeling it wasn't fear that made them disappear. It was respect. She had passed their test. From then on, no one dared laugh at her again. Because the silent girl they once mocked had become the quiet storm no one wanted to challenge, and that gym. It never felt the same again.